Hello and welcome to the Casual Boys podcast. I'm Brandon,
And I'm Francisco.
and we're here to talk about movies, TV, current events, memes, and the internet. But keeping it all casual though.
Yes, of course. We always keep it casual.
Now, Francisco,
Yes, Brandon?
I'd like to have a call. I'd like to have a casual conversation with you about Houston and its media.
Houston media. Okay. I was born there, so I might have a little bit to say.
Now, I think it's fair enough to say that you and I are pretty big media heads.
I mean, we're here.
Gotta start somewhere.
Yeah.
But do you ever feel like sometimes I don't know, maybe this is just me, but there were more opportunities in Houston?
I think there's a lot of opportunities, especially like in the corporate side. I just think the entertainment here is lacking.
Mm-hmm.
I think plenty of people can make a good living just in pure if you take media as a big as its full category, but entertainment media I think is just something we lack a lot.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you specified on that specifically because it's been something that I've thought about probably since when I was still in college about what I'd like to do with all the skills I've procured, and a lot of the times you always see people going towards the big centers of entertainment media. So you see them going towards Los Angeles, you see them going towards New York, and recently Georgia, well, recently as in like the past 5 to 7 years, Georgia,
Like 20 years at this point.
Georgia has like really boosted up its like production set. Like it's become an investment point for a lot of people when they want to go to produce shows or TV. And I found out about that because, and like this is not to get political, but there was a certain point where Georgia had passed um, some marriage bill where it restricted marriage only to a man and a woman, and a lot of uh, studios were threatening to pull out of Georgia and film somewhere else. But I like to pass all that just to kind of focus more on the fact that it exists that here in the South we can produce and be a center of entertainment hub. And I know that Austin, for what it is, like there's a lot of that going over there too. Um, Off the top of my head, I'm not sure about like maybe movies, but of course, Rooster Teeth. I think that's it's a prime example of like a good media center.
Yeah, and I think there's always going to be exceptions. Um like I think but Rooster Teeth still has its foothold in LA. Like
Right,
they have
right.
their fun house and
Mm-hmm.
whatever else is left over there. They have their
R.I.P. Couch
foothold.
Up.
Yeah, R.I.P. Catch Up. They have their foothold there. There is a lot of people talk about oh well Richard Linklater, he has his studio in Austin,
Mm-hmm.
and UT has a really well renowned film school.
Right,
But
very true.
I think that like especially with especially with films that are made in Texas, by people from Texas, it's either you've never heard of it or you
Mm-hmm.
can count on one hand. And even the ones that you haven't heard of, you could probably still count on one hand how many movies are scheduled to be filmed in Texas this year.
Right, right.
And I don't think that that's I think it's more of a product of people aren't as convinced by either people in Texas that are making the laws and stuff aren't as convinced of um the the point or the jobs that could be created by a big entertainment sector, or people who would make entertainment stuff aren't convinced by like the incentives that Texas gives, because Texas they give a fair amount of incentives,
Mm.
but it's like I think they give it to you like cash after the fact or something like that. While in like Georgia, I don't know if they still do this now, but they do like tax stuff, and I think tax stuff is a lot more. It's a lot. It's probably a lot better for investors because they don't like it's part of their. I don't want to get into some Bernie Sanders talk here, but there's probably some finagling that's better off if you get your money that way and make your money that way
Mm.
than if the government gives you money, which they are carefully keeping track of.
Right, right.
It's probably not as entertaining as an option.
They weren't feeling the burn like that.
Yeah, no, they're they're feeling the 1% burn, not the 99% of germs kind of burn.
Oh my god.
I think yeah, going along with that, I've been watching Friday Night Lights, as you know, and rewatching, I guess technically, but pretty much watching for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And I have no idea if that's filmed in Texas, but I feel like it would be a huge misstep if it wasn't, just because everything in it looks exactly like Texas. So it's kind of, you really don't have to do anything to the town. I was noticing that the way that they film it, it looks very much like film grainy, like home movie type, but
Right, right.
obviously it's still like cinema cameras that they use. So it's very much to give you that home feel, that like kind of out of time feel. Like it doesn't feel modern, it doesn't feel really old. It just feels like its own time. And I think that's something that Texas is good for when it comes to filming stuff.
Mm.
But as with as I was saying before, there's probably that group that is like, well, what's the point of filming in Houston if I can't have like an amazing skyline shot, or I can't have like a
Right, right.
scene um, happening in front of the Statue of Liberty or whatever. Like other than uh, other than having like an amazing food and like restaurant scene, like there's nothing you can really show people that represents Houston. Like, oh, like yeah, that's Houston. That's the skyline. Oh, how
Right,
can you
yeah.
tell? Well, cause like there's that building that looks like a Mexican pyramid. Like what? You know?
So just to clarify, Friday Night Lights. It seems from what I've been looking up that most of it was filmed in Austin.
Okay.
Yeah, so it has Texas roots
Yeah.
for that. And also another point to clarify. So when I was mentioning that I was mentioning about the thing about Georgia, the 5 to 6 year thing. Mostly, I just meant about like the recent boom in that, because
Oh,
you're
okay.
right. Like it's not a new development. Like it's been going on since 2007.
Mhm.
I'm looking at a Time article right now that's from 2018,
Okay.
and that stated that in 2007 the film industry spent 93 million on productions in Georgia.
Mm.
In 2016, it spent over 2 billion,
Oh wow. Yeah.
and so Georgia's government estimates that in 2016 alone, the film industry gave the state a 7 billion economic boost through job creation and tourism.
Wow.
So a lot of statistics, a lot of data points kind of go into that.
Mhm.
But you also brought up a lot of points too about regarding the state and the laws that go into that. I'm not privy to a lot of the details that go into that, but I do know that there's a lot of agreement that has to go on between the entertainment industry and the state legislature, and how they have to go about making certain tax reductions and tax benefits for that.
Mhm.
And also, I'm glad you pointed out certain things about. I don't know if I would like. What would you say? Like limitations or certain things about Houston's scene? Because I like how you pointed out the food scene,
Mhm.
because that's a major part of Houston, but
Mhm.
it's also a certain niche that a lot of people have kind of gone into.
Yeah.
And so I remember in school sometimes they would talk about what things you could do about Houston, and a lot of people would talk about food, but then they kind of just like leave it at that.
Mm.
And obviously there are people who've explored that venue and gone and expanded it a lot more. But it does just seem kind of like I don't want to call it a cop out, but sometimes a cop out because obviously you know this, but unless you are willing to put in the research and the time to see how that looks,
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, there's only so much you're gonna get out of that.
Yeah, because you can only eat so much. Yeah, no, that's might people might think of that as blasphemy, but after you have dinner or lunch, and then
Hmm.
you might get boba after if you have room, and then like you're just kind of full of caffeine, and you don't know what to do because everything is like a 25-minute drive,
Oh yeah,
and
absolutely.
so even if you do find the occasional thing, like it's nothing that will keep you entertained for more than like a couple of hours. And I think that that's a good thing, honestly.
Hmm.
About Houston is that it doesn't have a lot of touristy stuff because I don't. It's difficult to say because obviously you want people to visit, you want people to spend money
Yeah,
here, but there's so many people that are just moving here
hmm,
straight up
yeah.
that
Because
just
I
want to
believe like
live
we're like the
here.
fourth largest city in the U.S.
Yeah, and close to third, and
Yeah.
like just people just wanting to live here or around here because of all the like opportunity and stuff. But it's not. Again, it's not like if somebody visits, they're like, "Oh, Houston, right?" Because Houston is not. Houston is never gonna be what anybody wants it to be. So it's never gonna
That's an
be
excellent
like.
point with that too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's never gonna be like. Oh, we have the Johnson Space Center here, but that's like 25 minutes out of town.
Right. Right.
Oh, we have the Astrodome, but that's like an old piece of crap now that the city literally has no idea what to do with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it's got like a giant brand new stadium. Not brand new, it's like 20 years old now,
Yeah.
but relatively brand new stadium
And then there's also
right
people
next
who
to it.
always say like, "Let's go see downtown," but I'm like, "Okay, which part of downtown do you want to
Yeah.
go?" It's so spread out. It's also like really crowded,
Hmm.
and like if you want to get anywhere, like you got to be careful where you drive. You got to pay for parking. It's
Yeah.
like
Or if
it's
you,
definitely not the same way that you would go to explore like New York City.
yeah. And even if you get dropped somewhere, like if you Uber somewhere, you get dropped somewhere, you're just stuck there.
Oh yeah,
Like you
yeah,
have
that's
to
true.
Uber to go to somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like it's not like you can just like, oh well, I'm in this part, so I'm just gonna walk over like a couple of streets to this part. It's like no, like if you go like
Well, I've
clubbing,
actually I've walked there.
well,
I've
cause
walked
you're
a
weird
distance.
though. You're weird. But you're not a tourist. You're from here. You had to walk. But like if you go get dropped off like Washington, which for if you're not from Houston is where there's a lot of bars and stuff.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot of bars in Washington. But if you get tired of being at bars, like being around 50 other bars isn't gonna help you.
Right.
Like you wanna go either get some food or like
You want to diversify a little bit.
yeah, like do something else. And I think that that's where it's really hard because then you just have to Uber multiple times
Hmm.
in like a day. And I feel like in other places that like a lot of people go to, you don't really have to do that.
Hmm.
Like even like or even places that have really good public transport. Like yeah, you'll get on a train. But unless it's like New York, like it's probably not convenient to even do that multiple times.
Right. Because
So
here we have the light rail,
yeah,
but then even then, like you're limited to certain sections of the
yeah, it
city.
just goes where it goes,
It
and
goes where
if
it
you
goes.
don't need to go
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
then oh well.
And I'm also glad that you kind of touched upon this when you mentioned about the media opportunities being more corporate.
Mm.
Can you expand on that a little bit? I think I know
Yeah,
what you're
so
saying, but I'd like to hear more about what you wanted to
yeah, no
details about that.
problem. So like corporate, as in like there's a lot of oil companies here.
Hmm.
So like sometimes they'll do like addresses to their employees, or they'll make like instructional manuals or like things like onboarding stuff. So it's like welcome to. I don't want to say a company because I don't want to like
Oh, you don't want to get blasted
yeah,
out by that? Yeah.
welcome to this oil company. We're a family here. Blah
Hmm.
blah blah. Um, all that stuff that all the like corporate materials that they make, like
Yeah.
somebody films
Like
that.
promotional stuff.
Yeah, and it's like
Yes.
they don't go cheap on that because well sometimes they do, but a lot of times they don't go cheap on that
That's where
because
we come in.
yeah, it reflects their brand. Like
Yes. Yes.
if this is the guy who's getting paid $3 million a year, you want to have like a giant film crew,
Mm-hmm.
even if he's just saying Merry Christmas. You want to have a giant film crew. You
Right,
don't just
right.
want like one guy with his
With
phone.
like a lousy camcorder.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You
Or
want
or
like
his phone too. His phone
you
too.
want amazing lighting and like you want all this stuff. So that's one way. Another way is commercials. So like for local stuff or like local businesses, local TV, whatever. They'll have people do commercials for them, and that's really where a lot of the money comes. You'll have
Mm-hmm.
people that just do commercials, and it'll be like $2-3 million. They're like a person will get paid to make a commercial, like to direct a commercial. It's just like what the heck? Like it's a couple of minutes, but those couple of minutes get played like every day,
Oh
like
yes.
sometimes multiple
Yeah.
times an hour. So like you,
Sometimes I like the ones of like small business owners, like they
hmm
have their own
just in front of a
a
green
green
screen.
screen, yeah.
Yeah.
And they have like those weird animations sometimes.
Uh
Like
huh.
I remember seeing one guy. This is a couple of days ago. He was invaded by aliens, and he's punching the aliens away.
What?
But like the background, obviously this is like photoshopped or
Uh
like
huh.
After Effects. Like it's his inventory. I think he was like a mattress guy or whatever.
Uh
So
huh.
he's fighting aliens with his mattresses in the background.
What
Yeah.
the
So
heck?
I've always had a soft spot. I know inherently they're probably not the best, but
Hmm.
it's also like part of. I don't know about other places, but definitely here in Houston, like it's been a staple since I've been watching TV.
Yeah, I think until you've reached a certain corporate level, you're like not allowed to make a good commercial. Like, I don't know if I've ever seen a commercial for like something that isn't a chain or like, a big that has like a big office somewhere
Mm,
that has a good commercial.
yeah, yeah.
And sometimes, I mean, so let's look at well, I'll use the example of The Office when they made that commercial for Dunder Mifflin,
Mm,
where you had Michael's commercial where it was like, I guess cinematic. I guess you can think of it as cinematic, but it was like all of the people that worked for him, and it was all of them like telling their story kind of. And then you had the corporate one, which is like very much like just a guy walking around confused in a paper store, and that even though what they're trying to say is like you don't want to go to those big guys, go to us. We can help you.
mm,
Like I think having the people you're going to, having them it be obvious that like okay, these guys like they definitely don't have like they have enough clients to like warrant a commercial, but they don't have enough to have a good commercial. So I think I'll be okay going there. They won't be just like totally swamped.
right, right.
And but I think that's more like in the back of our minds that we'll think about it. It's not like an obvious thing.
I understand the, I guess, commercial process, and I promise you, this is not me like trying to insert a plug here, but I've had to work on a commercial before, and it was for the Italian Cultural Center here in Houston,
Mm.
and it was for the Italian Festival at the University of St. Thomas. And that thing by itself, it was no more than 45, 50 seconds, but I was with two other people working on this, and that took a good 3+ months to work on that,
Wow.
to get the footage, to get the right music, to get the approval, as well as the feedback that you needed to get back onto that. And this thing played only at a couple of times at a Dynamo game. They played it over there because I think they had some connection to it, and so they wanted to broadcast that,
And that's it.
and that was it. Yeah,
It didn't even play on
it didn't
TV.
make it to TV.
What
I
the
don't think so.
heck?
Yeah, I'm gonna see if I can find it. I'll show it to you one day because it looks
Uh,
decent enough, but it's obviously not super professional.
mm.
Like it can pass on TV.
I mean, if you got paid, it's professional.
Do you ever like? I don't want to put it just on you, but wish that Houston was more of a media hub?
Um, I don't think so. So I think definitely I wouldn't want it to be home to any more like news
Mm-hmm.
stuff because I know LA and especially New York. New York's
Right.
got like a stranglehold on news,
Yeah.
but it's also like I don't know. It's not like anybody would be in my personal business, but I feel like Houston. I feel like Houston isn't like because it doesn't have those touristy things and because it doesn't have it's not easy to describe. I don't think that it's something that we can really brag about easily.
Mm.
Like you can brag about New York even if you're being like over I guess if you're bragging too much, you still have
I was
stuff
gonna
to
say
brag
being
about.
overly New Yorker.
Yeah, it's just you can have. I'm not gonna do my New York impression. I'll do my Vin Diesel impression. Hey, New York, hey. That's my Vin Diesel impression.
I like what you said. You
Uh,
told me this recently that
uh,
your impression of me is basically you trying to do a Vin Diesel.
yeah, hey, I'm Brendan. What's up? Yeah, and it's something that my Vin Diesel impression is something that. No, I'm just kidding. I think that it's. I think I'm okay with the coverage that Houston gets
Mm-hmm.
because also there aren't like huge expectations on people. Like you just kind of are able to live your life, run your business, whatever. It isn't like in New York where your existence is almost a meme. Where you're like you go down and then you go to like Brooklyn and then you just like have like a bodega at
Right.
every
Yeah.
corner.
You can't just
But
be
like
walking here.
yeah, it's like you go into a bodega. It's like they look at you like they've never seen you before
Mm-hmm.
because only 100 people will ever go there, and they know all 100 people like that.
Yeah.
Like here, you just I mean, you could literally just not saying you should, but if you had to, you could just literally pick up and start a completely new life, like 20 minutes away from where you live right now. Like if you get a new job, move out of the house,
Mm-hmm.
like go to a new church or something, like get develop a new network, like you can feasibly do that, and like nobody it'll never like the life you had before doesn't really affect you.
Yeah.
Now,
Which is kind of weird because I mean, just to build upon that a little bit, because Houston is so sometimes it feels like when you go to one part of Houston compared to the other one, it doesn't even feel like you're still in Houston,
yeah.
but you're still in Houston,
Hmm.
and I don't know sometimes how I feel about that. Like sometimes I just like how big the city is,
Hmm.
but also because Houston has no zoning, and so you can kind of just do things everywhere. That's why you see sometimes the weirdest shops and the weirdest places.
Yeah, there's an area in Houston called City Center that is nowhere near the center of Houston,
That's right. That's right.
and it's not the downtown of anything, but it's just where two freeways meet. So freeways, highways, whatever you call it, where you're from, and there's just a bunch of shops and stuff there.
Yeah, but also to clarify, like it's also a very bustling, very wealthy section.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, a lot of Houston is like that, where it's like
Yeah.
there's a lot of hubs around where people with a lot of money live, and I think that that's cool. But it's also like there's an unbelievable amount of gentrification going on,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and there's a lot
That's an
of
excellent point.
yeah, especially around my one of my professors was telling us he's an art professor, so take this with a grain of salt, I guess, or a grain of charcoal. I don't know, art, whatever. But he was
You
talking
ain't got
about
to have
how
that grain of chalk right there.
yeah, a grain of chalk, a little bit of
No, I'm kidding. Not like that.
yeah, of cocaine. Um, there's like an area in Third Ward, which is a part of Houston that is well known for having a lot of crime, and it's very not. It's not like a fun place to be. It's very lower class and predominantly African American and Hispanic. And there used to be in those areas, there used to be a lot of wealthier Jewish people, and they started moving out whenever a lot of people started moving to Houston to like seek better opportunities. They they call it. Hi, mom. I'm with Brandon. We'll
Ah,
just cut this part out.
yeah.
But it was a lot of there's a lot of so there was an area of Houston that was predominantly wealthy Jewish people, and then because of minorities started moving in, wealthier people started leaving, and now that property taxes are going up and everything's worth more because it's close to the city
Mm-hmm.
and the city's getting bigger, and so even things that were slightly further away from downtown are getting more expensive. Now a lot of people are moving back, and like the property taxes are going up, and so the poor people that are there that have, their family might have been there forever,
Yeah.
but they're just like, kind of stuck in like a poor situation.
Mm-hmm.
They
Living paycheck
can't
to
afford to
paycheck.
live there, so they have to move to the suburbs, and then everything just becomes everything just becomes one big Mexico City. And I don't know if you've ever been to Mexico City. I
No, I
haven't,
haven't.
but it's very
Despite
much.
despite my mom being from there, I've never been.
Oh, well, there you go. My family's not from there, but they've been, but I haven't. But it's very much like it's an enormous city,
Yeah.
and it's surrounded by shanties.
I believe that
Yeah,
100%.
it's
Yeah.
and there's because there's so many people that they have to like. I think you actually have to. You can only you have like a permit or something that says you can only drive on certain days because
Mm.
it's so
Wow.
impossible to get in through the town.
Yeah.
And then also the government's corrupt and everything's corrupt, so you generally don't want to go there. But they do have a lot of touristy stuff,
They do. Yeah.
and we don't. So hopefully, hopefully we don't end up like them. Hopefully things don't get that bad. Um, but there is that thing where people are getting pushed out, and then whenever people start, I guess, being able to come back into the city,
Mm-hmm.
like, is it gonna be? Are the people that live in the city right now going to move back out to the suburbs, and it's just going to create like some kind of weird ebb and flow
Right.
situation?
Right.
Um, so I don't. Back to your question. I don't think that I want. I don't think that um, I want Houston to become more of a target than it is, because there is a lot of I guess one thing that would be good, well, not to like dominate the conversation too much,
No, please. Yeah. You
but
gave me a good
but
insight.
there is
Please go
a.
ahead.
I went to a talk recently. It was given by a survivor of it was a survivor of sex trafficking,
Mm.
and her name was, oh gosh, I want to say her name was Niecy Hamilton, and she ran for something recently, something in the government of Houston. But shout out to her. She had a really interesting look into the life, because it wasn't necessarily like a bunch of people getting kidnapped and made to be prostitutes. It was a lot of just people that knew people, and people that were trying to, I guess, people that were trying to meet the status quo in a way. So you had a lot of like kind of youngish men, like in their 20s and stuff, that people would look down on them because they only had like, or they didn't have a girl,
Mm.
or they only had like one girl, and not a girl like girlfriend, like girl as in like she like pays for your stuff, she works, you don't have to do anything. She goes out at work, provides for you, but you like have that weird ownership of her, and that happens a lot in like, that happens a lot in those kind of neighborhoods. Like she
Right.
was from that area that
Mm-hmm.
like it's like you don't want gentrification to happen, because some people don't deserve that, but also you want the quality of life
To
of
go up.
areas to be better. Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
because you don't want one of your options should not be to be sexual trafficked,
Yes.
and that is a very distinct, clear opportunity. And I put the biggest quotes I can on the word opportunity, because
Right.
that should
Right.
not be in that conversation, but it is. It's the truth of it, and you really, it's because I want. I guess I don't want people who don't deserve to be put on blast to suffer the
Mm-hmm.
consequences of having a bigger news, I guess, area, news coverage,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But I also want it to be easier to address these problems.
Right. I think you brought up a very good point in these past couple of minutes about the consequences of having that.
Hmm.
Because a lot of people, when they think about this topic, it's mostly about what opportunities they can get,
Mhm.
whether it be through film, through web series, through something like that. And I can definitely say that I've been on the probably in that mindset, especially after graduation, because like you've also mentioned previously, that there's a lot of news coverage. We've got plenty of people doing that. We have Houston Public Media, we have Channel 2, Channel 11, Channel 13. Um, but and this was something I've also thought about too. That's why I never went into local news coverage, because that's not. It's not that it's not important, but I just never felt like I would enjoy doing that,
Mm.
because we have so many people doing that and covering all that. And there is a part of me that sometimes wishes that we could have our own Houston Rooster Teeth kind of deal. That we could have that and produce content, put it on the web, and slowly grow more and more and more.
Mm-hmm.
But as you've also previously mentioned in all of your points, that there are consequences to having such a thing. Once you start having all of this coming up, more people are going to want to come visit, and more people want to come visit. That leads to a domino effect of other people coming into places have to boost up their prices. More things happen about that, and you just don't know about like how that's going to go on, especially in such a big of city as this is already, and
Mm-hmm.
how that would work out. I think that maybe probably not in 20 years, but it might be something that Houston will think about, because Houston primarily still is focused on energy. It's a big business town. A lot of people come here for oil or natural gas and kind of work out from there. But you know, not to play pseudo woke, but with this whole coronavirus deal, we're seeing how layoffs and jobs is working here in the city as well,
Mm-hmm.
and how that goes about. Not saying that being a media hub would have solved all of our job problems, but it might have been like an alternative to people doing work from home.
Yeah, because with the
Because we
like,
don't have any BuzzFeeds here in Houston. We don't have
uh,
any of like Vox Pop and all that.
mm-hmm. I think something about so backstory on me for those that don't know. I briefly had a flirtation with the medical field, and that was one of the first things that I realized was that being in the medical field, which is Houston has the biggest medical center in the world. Being in the medical field, it's really the service industry. And I think what made me realize that is that most of the things in Houston are service based. So it's like people doing things for other people. It's not necessarily generating products or like selling things or things like that. It's people doing stuff for you. People either serving as middlemen or providing something that only like another person can provide. So I think that yeah, it is one of those things where a lot of people in New York and LA get paid by people who don't live in New York and LA, right? Like revenue comes in, things
That's an
come into
excellent
them,
point. Yeah.
and things come in and cover for them. Meanwhile, there's still people in the service industry. There's still all them. So whenever people are getting paid from outside, they bring in that money to
Mm.
the people that are there. But Houston is just it's basically a bunch of people serving each other like in a loop, and that has its limits. Like right now, we see a lot of people who are out of work or they legally cannot go to work
Mm.
because um, you know, their restaurant can only do takeout. So
Right.
the servers, like, what's gonna happen to the servers? What's gonna happen to even like bus boys and all that? Things you wouldn't necessarily think about. Um, people are people like it's not just like there's people go to a factory every day and like make things like that. Like yeah, we have our chemical plants and all that, but that's
It's way different than
relative.
like production, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, relative to, and it's way less people. Like
Mm.
you can make, like, like the factories that are making chemicals are nowhere near as big as the ones making cars, or making well cars is a bad example because there's probably not that many people, but making like iPhones and stuff.
Mm.
Um, and I know all that is being phased out by like robots and all that. So Houston's kind of like a an example of what life will be like once automation is more of a thing. But I think that right now we're seeing a huge effect of what automation actually looks like. That oh we're not gonna have if we can't have people helping or people paying people to do stuff for them, then the people that are originally expecting you to do things aren't going to pay the other people, and it's just like a big chain of people out of work, people
Right.
out of money.
It's like the argument point that we're supposed to pay for the machines for us to make more money. We're not supposed to be paying the other way around
Yeah,
and losing the money.
yeah.
It's definitely true.
And you can have like things that are automated that you don't think about
Mm.
is like rent,
Oh yeah.
because rent is going to continue like for those restaurants that can only do takeout,
Mm.
for the people that
And this is
are
assuming they still
servers.
have the same amount of volume coming in.
Yeah, like rent doesn't, they don't care how much money you're making. You well, okay, when they raise your rent, they might
Yes.
care about how much money you're making, but they don't care about how much, they don't care about how much is going in to you. They just care about that you can pay them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, that's what happens with, all those banks, all those people foreclosing on their homes and stuff, like all the
Mm-hmm.
banks not having any money and having to be bailed out by the government. Like that's what happens.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
if you don't,
Yeah. Like at the
the
restaurant I
money's
work
got to
at,
come in
like
from somewhere.
there was a at the end of that, I guess, little shopping district or like complex, a very very nice area where people would go for lunch and brunch. Very very wealthy benefactors would go there, but and this is even before the whole Corona problem. Like they left about 8 or 9 months ago, just
Mm.
because rent was so high, and they were there for about 10 years,
Hmm.
and people just couldn't believe that. And then and someone when they were there asked me like, "Hey, they closed." Not I didn't feel like they were thinking like, "Why are they closing?" The restaurant I work at is still open, but part of it just like it was so successful, like you would never expected it to just go out like that.
Hmm. Yeah, and in that area, so for those of you that don't know, there's an area of Houston called Montrose, and it's very, I guess you'd call it hipster. You'd really
The
want to
most
call it
hipster of
hipster.
Houston you can get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely has those kind of vibes, and there's a lot of like small shops. There's a lot of like coffee shops. There's a lot of places that where people go to just hang out and stuff, or like there'll be restaurants with like patios and all that. And it's very much an area where people spend a lot of time, but not necessarily spend that much money.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's
Sometimes they just want to go in for the picture.
yeah. And I've been to like, there's this one coffee shop that was right next to that shopping center where you work,
Mm,
and I only went one time, but I was like, "Whoa, this place is cool." I forgot what it's called
mm,
already, and I was like, "Wow, this place is cool, all this stuff," and like there was a good amount of people there. And then um, I saw the other day that it was closed, and I was like, "Wow, it's just not there." And
yeah,
like, who knows
yeah.
how long it hasn't been there? And like, I never would have known because you have um, all these like the smaller businesses. They have to put so much more effort into their branding and
Mm,
like how they organize the restaurant and stuff.
yeah. And their menus as well, what they
Yeah,
can keep.
recipes, the distributors, all that, and that's expensive. Like
Yeah, it's,
even if like only need 2 3 people working at one time, like it's still really expensive to pay for everything, and especially when your numbers aren't like Starbucks or
exactly. Yeah,
McDonald's, where
yeah,
like everything becomes so much cheaper after like a certain point, but you have to have like 1,000 stores worth of stuff
yeah. Mm-hmm.
to get to that.
Yeah. And I guess I should just give a quick backstory of like why it's even launched in the first place, why I thought about this topic. And I was listening to NPR's All Things Considered because I'm a huge NPR nerd. I feel like I annoy everybody by telling that fact. But they were reviewing Solange's album, her latest one, and they were focused primarily on a song called Almeda.
Hmm.
And I, a couple of months later, saw the music video for that, and she has a lot of downtown,
Oh,
Houston downtown,
yeah.
and it was awesome to see because it was kind of going back to my initial thought process, like, oh, Houston could have so much more about this. Houston could have so much exposure, and
Hmm.
it actually, from what I understand, like it got a lot of people buzzing about the location because she also had that one section of downtown where there's that like ring and it's like in between a couple of buildings. It's by the medical center. I don't know what it's called, but it's very distinct.
Mm.
And
The ring?
yeah, it's like a ring kind of structure.
Mm. Is it like a tall ring? Anyways, go ahead.
But just like more and more when I was thinking about that, I'm like, Houston could totally do this. Houston could totally have more opportunities. Blah 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 blah. But also, like, like, as we've been talking about this whole time, like there are consequences and results that happen to it, whether you foresee it or not. And
Mm-hmm.
it's important to also keep in mind about that. Like, local people have to survive as well. And just because you want to bring in a new opportunity doesn't mean that you can necessarily kick the ones that are already here.
Mm-hmm.
And there are also people with a thought process that say, well, that's life. Change has to happen. There are winners and there are losers.
Something that's happened as I've gotten older is that it really bothers me when people like complain about Houston that
Mm-hmm.
aren't from here.
How so?
Because so you'll have people
That's an
like
interesting point. I don't think I've ever heard this before.
complaining about like traffic or that everything's
Uh-huh.
far or all this stuff. And excuse me. And I just find it annoying because like you're here.
Right.
Like you came here because it's
This is your
better. Like
choice.
why are you complaining?
Yeah,
You're here
yeah.
now cuz it's better for you. Like does it give you some kind of it's like that like rich guy when he interacts with Bane and he's like in The Dark Knight Rises, he's like, I gave you a lot of money and he's like, you think that gives you power over me? No, that's not. I'll do a better impression later. But it's like, yeah, like you does that, just because you're here now, you like are a part of here,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't give you a right to complain. Like, and you're complaining about like a bunch of things that make, that are the reason that you're here. Like traffic, it's a lot of people, a lot of cars, a lot of movement, a lot of business going on probably. It's not just a bunch of people driving around for fun.
Yeah.
Like people are driving
I
around
would
because they
hope
have to.
not. Sometimes with the traffic, it's a little
It
questionable,
wouldn't
but I know
be,
what you mean. Yeah.
yeah, it wouldn't be very fun for very long. I sometimes drive around for, anyways. Um, so, but yeah, it's like all these things that you're complaining about are like things that are the reflective of the reasons that you're here.
Mm-hmm.
And like I hate that that type of mentality because then you're just kind of like, well, like we were saying before, Houston doesn't have that much to brag about,
Mm-hmm.
so it's just all you have are people complaining, and what good is that for anybody? You're just kind of like complaining because you can, but complaining because you can, like, it is the least productive thing that you can do,
Yeah, that's
in
very
my
true.
opinion.
So I don't know. That was just a topic I've always thought about, and as somebody who appreciates media as much as I do,
Mm.
like what they would ever think about if this were ever to happen. And I'm glad that you didn't just go off onto the certain points. Well, yeah, Houston should totally have this. Houston should totally have that. You had a, I guess, more introspective insight about what would happen if Houston became more of a hub for media.
Mm.
So I really appreciate all that insight for that. And you didn't
You're
just give me
welcome.
like, yeah, you didn't just give me like $1.
You're welcome. You're
You didn't give me just $1 answers. Like, yeah, totally. Make
welcome.
more movies here. Make more of this. Make more of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for me, to get me paid, you can make a couple more movies.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to make you don't have to like create a whole new industry here. Like I don't think that. I mean, go for it if you want. I guess I'm not gonna stop you, but I think Houston, as far as like growth and like the economy, I think it's doing extremely well.
Mm-hmm.
It just needs to taper down a lot of the problems that come with having a lot of people,
Yeah.
and whether that's sex trafficking or like gang violence or like gun violence or whatever.
So there's still a part of me that also hopes someday that maybe we'll have more opportunities to do that. Because I honestly do love this area. I would totally work here for media purposes if I could, but also just finding a job nowadays,
Mm,
you gotta work on that.
yeah, the money will find its way.
Hopefully,
into our pockets.
hopefully, if you'd like to donate to our podcast, no, I'm kidding, I'm kidding. Maybe,
Maybe in the future.
maybe in the future.
Hmm.
Well, Francisco,
Yes, Brandon.
I'd say that was a pretty casual conversation, man.
Yeah, it's pretty casual.
Join us next time for more casual conversations with the Casual Boys.
Bye.
Bye.